welcome to another episode of Footnotes. Today we're talking to John Carrington, the CEO of ZVerse here in the Midlands of South Carolina. John's company started out as a software company, as a lot do these days. But the pandemic came and hit his company like a Mack truck at 90 miles an hour. And he had to pivot into becoming a manufacturer. So listen as we talk about how a software company starts making things and how that made all the difference for ZVerse over the past 12 months. John, thanks for joining us today. We've got John Carrington, who is founder and CEO of ZVerse here in Columbia, and just to have a conversation about pandemics, face shields, and maybe some lessons learned. But John, if we could start, I guess maybe at the beginning, what was ZVerse doing and where were you sort of a year ago before the pandemic hit?
Yeah, so ZVerse is a digital manufacturing technology company. It still is today, was before the pandemic. And our mission in life for several years has been to create the fastest path from ideas to manufacturable files, for one, which have become manufactured parts. And we specialized in design and software to automate the conversion of 2D engineering data into, so think about drawings, engineering drawings, converting that into 3D CAD data that can be manufactured using 3D printing technology or injection molding or something else. And so, before the pandemic, we were working with and still working with like global manufacturers that were already thinking about supply chain issues and how they build resiliency in their supply chain and reduce their inventory carrying costs and all these things that they can accomplish with digital manufacturing. And we were served as sort of an enabler to that, right? So through our software and services, sort of accelerated the digital transformation, if you will, of supply chain.
So you sort of would take a sheet of paper, like you said with the drawing, apply your process and technology to it so that someone who made those things could actually make it. Because you can't really take a sticky note and turn that into a product, I guess.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So today there are billions of parts, many billions of parts out there that only exist in analog 2D engineering drawings. And that, is we'll probably get into it later, but in digital manufacturing, everything starts with a CAD file. And so for companies or governments that are looking to have a distributed manufacturing or hybrid manufacturing sort of process, they have to have CAD data to do it. And today, most of those organizations just have, like I said, billions of files that are all 2D. And so we help convert all that data into 3D.
So a year ago, you were converting along, you were taking those things and helping manufacturers, and then a year ago happened. What changed? Besides everything.
Yeah, what didn't change? Right. So it's interesting. Almost exactly a year ago, the world sort of inverted. And, for us as a company, one, we were really concerned for obviously health and safety of everyone, but also the health of the company. And all of our customers were, stopping manufacturing, and they were, trying to figure things out themselves. And in the course of about 2 weeks, as everybody had gone home remote, or everybody's kids are at home, we were just trying to sort out what we were going to do, what was life going to look like. And we started receiving just urgent requests from hospitals and government agencies, like requests like I've never seen before. CFOs of hospital systems calling you at 9 o'clock at night. Typically, those people are pretty difficult to get in touch with, right? Anybody who sells into medical. But for them to be calling you and pleading for ventilator components, face shields, masks, all this sort of stuff, and asking what we could do.
So they were asking almost for a finished product. It doesn't sound like they were asking for a drawing.
Right, no, yeah, they're asking, hey, most of these people did not even understand what it was we did. They just know that we are known for product development, is how they understood it. And so we were getting requests, hey, we need, the first request was, I need 5,000 reusable protective face shields like tomorrow. And, can you 3D print that? Can you design something and 3D print them for us? And so the answer was yes. And we started, immediately, responding to that.
Did you have 3D print capability at the time?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So we've done that for a long time.
Okay.
And
So you had the sort of the engineering and the drawings piece, sort of that conversion part of your business, but you also had the ability to 3D print even then.
Right. I mean, so we have rapid prototyping capabilities, and that's, really where we started. So yeah, we do that all day long. So we were able to respond really quickly and go from literally a request that didn't even have a drawing, but, design something, and instead of kind of going through prototyping, it was literally into just, here's a finished product immediately. And so that was on, let's say, a Wednesday, and then on Thursday, we had another request for 50,000, and by Friday, we had another request for, I think, 100,000, and which was, all unsolicited. And
what's it like as a founder and a CEO to have, you understand what it's like to go to the market and say, here I am, this is what we're doing, here's a problem that you have we'd like to solve. But what's it like when the flow sort of reverses, where the market is just pounding on your door saying, no, this is our problem now, John, please solve it? What's that like? Is it fun? Is it scary? Is it all the above?
First thing I would say is bizarre.
Because
that never happens, right? Honestly, it was a mix of all those things, of being exciting, but also it was very scary, because from a health and safety sort of, it was scary in the sense that we were getting a view into hospital operating rooms. We were getting a view into hospitals in a way that TV cameras couldn't tell the stories.
What were you seeing?
I mean, we were having, both personally and through the company, I mean, we were getting inbound from everywhere of doctors, nurses, mothers of nurses who were pleading for PPE for either themselves, their loved ones, their team. We had an anesthesiologist who, said, I went to Lowe's last night to try and get some stuff for my team. He was like, we don't have anything at one of the major hospital systems. And that was, I don't know, it was scary in that sense, because it really, here in South Carolina at the time in March of last year, we weren't seeing much. I mean, I think this week, yesterday, somebody posted a photo of this, but yesterday, a year ago, I think we had 6 cases in South Carolina. And it just got real really quick that this is something really serious, and people are scared, which scared us, to be honest with you.
How quickly did the demand, from what I think you're saying, the demand started out maybe fairly local, if you will, sort of maybe within South Carolina, but how quickly did that extend outside of the state?
So it's interesting when, in 3D printing, so we were able to start production very quickly and respond to those initial requests very quickly. But once the orders got over 100,000, 3D printing is not great for that. If you need 100,000 of something, next week, 3D printing is really fantastic for if you need low volume, complex geometry, and you need something very fast. But if you need in orders of 1 million units of something, injection molding is really the technology that you would use to do that, which is a longer process to go to tooling and all these things. I mean, it usually takes weeks to get set up before you produce the first product. So we had a decision to make as a business of, we don't know what's on the other side of this, what's going on right now. You know, everything is shutting down, and including a lot of our customers. We can only 3D print 1,000 a day at the time.
Okay. Wow.
And we have orders right now for 300,000. And so we made a decision really quick to move to injection molding, which meant taking longer, but we could actually then scale after we got set up. And also it required a considerable investment in tooling costs, you know, right out the gate. And so made that decision, you know, fairly quick, and we're able to then scale from 1,000 units a day to 120,000 units a day. And when we were able to do that, word traveled pretty quickly that we had volume, that we could produce, you know, millions of units, and that then attracted some really large outside.
What was the time frame from making that decision to, dare I say the word pivot into injection molding, to when you were starting to ship at that volume? What time frame did it take to make that a reality?
A day. I mean,
1 day.
Between the time, I mean, it was a Friday when we had the orders, you know, in the span of 3 days, it went from had not even received a call to 3 days later, I have now orders for, I think, 200,000 units at that time. Recognized we couldn't fulfill that demand with 3D printing alone. And so by Saturday morning, decided we've got to move to tooling and invest, you know, a lot of money in scaling that. And so we started putting the balls in motion to do it. And within, you know, 2.5 weeks, we had our first tool producing 5,000 units a day. And then by the end of that week, we were up to 30,000 units. And then we, you know, just continued to grow. It's typically not done like that. I mean, that was moving at the speed of light.
Yeah.
And in fact, everyone I talked to when I would, you know, was trying to rally this effort, everyone said it's not done like that.
Well, and perhaps it was moving at the speed of your market. You know, I think that, you know, when we all kind of, now that we've had a year, we're a year into this, and just this timestamp, I think it's March 12th of 2021. To your point, you know, 1 year ago, South Carolina had 6 sort of recorded cases. You know, a lot of water's gone under the bridge. But you said something earlier about, you know, you were certainly concerned with the public health aspects, with your team health and all the life changes that were occurring within team members at ZVerse. But you said something about the health of the company. How did the health of the company relate to sort of these very rapid decisions that you were making? The need for capital, finding capital, deploying it. Describe that process and what that was like to really be in tune with the health of your company.
Wow. I mean, it was, you know, there was a time where we just really weren't sure. We didn't have a clear line of sight as to who's going to survive this thing. Everybody is shutting down, you know, 40 million.
Survive financially.
Financially, because companies were, you know, shutting down. You know, manufacturing was shutting down. Supply chains, everything was grounding to a halt. And, you know, the access to capital was, you know, the market had totally inverted at the time. I mean, I was getting urgent texts from investors just saying, chaos is ensuing. And we knew we just had to act fast. I mean, you know, if you don't keep moving, you know, then, you know, the inevitable, you know, could look really bad. But for us, I mean, it really wasn't an option. We sort of looked at, okay, you got to take one or two paths, and one was really uncertain. The other one was going to require a lot of investment and could be uncertain, but you really just have to make a gut decision at the time. And that's, in situations like this, I think for so many people, that's what it boiled down to, right? It's just making gut decisions.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk out there of decision-making processes, decision-making matrices, kind of these objective ways that are sort of cold and clinical, that involve objective measures in terms of making decisions. But I think what I'm hearing is a great example of sometimes you just have to make a call.
Yeah.
Where did the confidence come from or the support come from to make that call?
One is experience. I think, when you're growing any company, you're constantly taking notes and benchmarking against things. And then, of course, I'm fortunate to have a really incredible group of investors, the shareholders, and board members that, we're in constant communication of trying to solve these challenges. But there was, and this is the first time, I think, for so many people, for literally everyone in the world, where all the rules kind of went out the window, right? I don't think you've ever seen a time in life where, for the entire population, everything had to be reimagined and reimagined quickly. And it was truly life and death scenarios, both for people, but also for businesses.
Well, so John, thinking back, I mean, now that you've been where you've been and you know what you know a year later, and certainly you guys have shipped, I think, safe to say, millions of units over that time, and we're here, in your facility. What did the pandemic give to you that you didn't have, other than maybe heartburn and stomach acid? But what did the pandemic give to you in terms of being a founder and a CEO that you didn't have a year ago?
Well, I know it's taken years off my life. I know that. So I don't know if it hasn't given me more years. But I would say, there's been just really so much. I don't think we've even really taken stock yet of this past year. But some of the, I guess, big takeaways I've had this year is that, one, because the rule books were thrown out, you do get a sense of, when you're trying to make decisions, sometimes, everyone has an opinion, right? And you've got to sort of, take those into consideration. And oftentimes people have, very, certain ways of doing things, and it's a religion to them of this is how you do it, or this is how you do it. And in this scenario, I mean, so many decisions had to be made, on the fly, and using instinct. And that certainly helped build a level of confidence of, just being able to make those decisions. But, and outside of that, I mean, one of the probably most amazing things that came out of this was witnessing the people who kind of rallied around to solve problems. Like, I've never seen a group of people who are all working remote now, doing things that they've never really done before, and filling roles that they've never done before, and becoming experts at it pretty quickly. Whether it was software engineers working on logistics to, dealing with hospitals on purchase managers, people that we've never had conversations with before, and that sort of thing. But I think everyone kind of developed a sense of confidence and competence in the last year, not just within our company, but it feels like across the country.
As a CEO, I mean, you mentioned that concept of, sort of people that have a job, if you will, that are definitely interacting in an area that would not be on their job description. What makes people do that?
Responding, I don't know. I mean, I think it's, again, just getting done what you got to get done. I think that, and people are still doing that, today. And it's, human nature is to survive, right? And it's, I think you saw that this year with, not just with companies like ourselves, but we look at like the restaurants and, the tourism industry and everyone who's trying to reimagine, their business and do what they can to survive.
So now again, we are where we are. What's next for ZVerse? Where are you guys headed as things stand right now?
Well, it's really interesting. I mean, most people know us now as this company that created this unique face shield.
Yeah, you're
right?
The face shield guys, yeah.
Right. And which is funny to see people in Hollywood wearing this thing that was not even thought of a year ago.
Right.
But our core business has grown also partly because of the recognition that we've gained, but also because of the need with supply chains needing to be reimagined now. And so our business, moving forward, I mean, we will continue to solve problems that are related to the pandemic. I mean, we live now in a world of sensors and barriers moving forward. I think attitudes for, particularly the age group of like my children. I mean, I have two daughters that are 14 and 12, and, you can't have 40 million kids go home one day and not be impacted by that. There are sort of attitudes towards, hygiene and viruses and things like that. So we'll continue to innovate around that area. But really our core business which is exciting, is solving this supply chain issue. And I think one of the things that we witnessed this year as well, I guess probably one of the biggest lessons that everyone had this year is how vulnerable we are with a linear analog supply chain that is single sourced and largely comes from one area of the world. And when that breaks down, when that source breaks down, it causes a tremendous amount of pain. And I think everyone now is really understanding, getting an appreciation also for sustainability, not just sustainability in the sense of carbon emissions, right? But sustainability in the sense of what can we produce on our own and how can we reduce waste in our manufacturing processes, in our transportation and everything else. So those are big sort of macro trends right now that are going to come out of this that we're aiming to solve. We're right now talking to a lot of companies that have just enormous catalogs of two-dimensional data for parts that may be service parts, or we call them legacy parts. So think about a company that has equipment that may be 50 years old and they need to repair parts. And they can do that with 3D printing and digital manufacturing, but they have to have the CAD data for it. And so our technology, we believe, is going to be a catalyst for a digital transformation in the manufacturing sector. And that's something we're excited about.
That is exciting to hear that not only, after you made sort of this almost maybe a permanent pivot into the injection moldings away from, or in addition to the drawings and the kind of being an aid to manufacturing, that It sounds like there's a pretty large market for what you guys are doing, and it's just more about, and that maybe the pandemic was sort of a wake-up call for manufacturers to say, oh, wow, not only do we need to watch out for sourcing and manufacturing, but even down to the basic building blocks, literally, of what they make.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting footnote here in this conversation that, manufacturing is more than just making stuff. It is making stuff. That's what we as consumers, see and hear and the different spheres, the political sphere and stuff get involved in, the ribbon cuttings and the handshaking. But I think, you've lived and breathed this for so long that, if people only knew what was sort of below the surface there, that there's far more below the surface than what is actually seen when the box arrives with the stuff in it.
Exactly. I mean, it's interesting. When I used to think about sustainability, I would envision, like tree hugging or something. That's kind of where people, sometimes it gets politicized to some degree about some sustainability measures, right? But, and what's been in the news a lot over several years has been this the Paris Climate Agreement. And what's really interesting, there's some components to that is, yes, it's about, reducing carbon emissions, but it's also about reducing waste in the products that we make and getting away from a total linear, disposable sort of product cycle where I buy something on that product breaks. Instead of repairing that part, I throw the whole thing away. It goes to a landfill, and then I buy a whole new product. And so I think you're going to see a move towards more sustainability, not just because of climate change, which is important, but really for sustainability so that we can make things that we need and we don't have to depend on a foreign country for it.
Well, and maybe this is a conversation for another day, but it reminds me of, what I think a lot of people experience, say, with home appliances, especially the expensive ones.
Right.
Something breaks and you call for the repair or something and basically the technician just comes along and says, you know what, you should just get a new one. In other words, either because the parts aren't there, it wasn't designed to be repaired.
Right.
It was designed so that, you wouldn't have to pay a lot of money to get it out the door and to get the sale, so to speak. And I think that maybe that sort of goes to speaking to some of what you're talking about, is that there's sort of not only renewed, like sustainability covers a wide gamut. And we think about sort of this throwaway mentality that, especially in the first world, that we have, because we've made products so inexpensively, which means probably unable to be repaired, unable to, so if it breaks, you just toss it and get a new one. Well, it sounds like there are bright days ahead for you guys. And it sounds like sometimes these horrible things like a pandemic can be a real turning point. And it's great to have a conversation with someone who has been able to sort of surf that wave, for lack of a better word. I'm pretty sure there were days when you felt like you were taking in more water than you were, leaving behind you there. But thank you for sitting down with us and having this conversation. It was really interesting. I think it's going to help some people.
Great. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.